We're good?
Yeah, so
I can call in the big guns if we need to. It's not me. It's not you. I'm not bad at technology, but Gloria is a wizard.
do we think we're good to go?
She said, can you tell her it's live? Live. She says it's live. So.
All right. Welcome everyone. Seeing that we are live on the live stream, and want to welcome John and Jen virtually. I will call the May 22nd meeting of the Sauble Conservation Authority Board meeting open. I'm going to ask John Farmer if he will please read the acknowledgement.
Thanks, folks. I've had substantial technical difficulties this morning. Can you see and hear me? That's not been true. I don't know the whole time. Jen's nodding, so that's helpful. Okay. Bear with me while I pull up the land acknowledgement. Again, my apologies.
If not, John, I can do it. That's not a problem.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just getting that document open. Trying to work on two computers that are not loving each other. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Whenever I think about land acknowledgements, and I can't help but think about the fact that we've come to like we talk about land, but when we're talking about land, we're talking about people. And when we're talking about the connection of those things, we're really talking about relationship and the idea of right relationship and honoring relations is something that really resonates with me. And I think as we start a meeting where we're talking about how do we as a collection of municipalities and organizations watershed in these places, I think that we are trying to do this work what people have been doing in this world for as long as there have been people in this part of the world, which is figure out how to treat the water and the people and all the work here. Thanks for letting me jump in, and sorry for my delay in pulling up the specific text.
Not a problem. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on for, is there any call for any additional agenda items? Again, seeing none, I move that the Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the agenda of May 22nd, 2024. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Bell and Member Mackey, thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you. And the approval of the minutes of April 24th, 2024. I am hoping that everyone has obviously had a chance to go over the minutes. And I will move that the Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors approve the full 30 minutes of April 24th, 2024. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member, I could say Vice Chair Dubick, and sorry, Member, correct, thank you. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Business out of the minutes, there are none at this time, so moving into the consent agenda. Anything to be pulled from this for anyone? Member Carlton.
The item, the letter from Peter Ferguson, I have concerns with that one in thinking that if we just pass that as consent agenda, it looks like we are agreeing with his statements.
We will pull that. You want to address that? Yes, sorry, motion to pull that item 3 from correspondence. Member Carlton, Member Mackey. So, comments?
Let me then get to find it. There was something about the tone of that letter that sat wrong with me, and it just felt that if we left that in consent agenda, and just passed it as part of that, that it would seem like we were totally agreeing with it. I apologize, I should have been at that page, except this just shut me down for a minute.
No apologies necessary. So it was something
Page 26.
we'll also say up front that we, CAO Tim Mathieu brought it to our attention as to bringing it on to the consent agenda, to the correspondence. Because yes, there is a certain tone to it, and there was concern. However, we feel there is a responsibility because correspondence should be recognized, but,
Yes.
but recognized with proper respect or, lack thereof, so accordingly.
Yeah, so I don't know how to really approach it. It just, like I said, it seemed that there has to be something said that we disagree with this. But yes, I agree. It's correspondence received. It has to show up on our agenda. But is there a way to say that we just don't agree with this item? That we simply receive it as that person's opinion? Would be my way of thinking on it.
Might even go a step further and say that maybe we don't agree with the tone of the particular correspondence.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my fellow director. When I read that, looking at the very end of it, the individual seemingly has a degree of credential. And just, if any one of us who have taken an oath to behave ourselves through codes of conduct, I don't believe this individual would quite make the grade. And as far as being able to receive it as part of Great Sauble Conservation, something sent, that is, but I would also affirm that we would make a very clear statement that this kind of thing is not something which we condone. Sending us letters, sending us comments, I think a little upgrade on professionalism would be in line. Thank you.
I agree. So how do you want to get that in the minutes? Would you like to make that statement, or are we taking, Valerie, are we taking those minutes as accepted of that statement? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that the motion would state what the members wish to say. That we receive this as correspondence, but whatever it is that you wish to say, we appreciate the time or whatever it is.
I think Member Bell says it very well. It doesn't meet with the code of conduct that we would hold ourselves to, so I don't think we can justify that in someone else.
Agreed. On that auspice, then, so for point 3, everyone in agreement for that statement. All in favor, because we've already had a second, so all in favor? Carried. Thank you. So the remaining points on the consent agenda, is there anything else that anyone wishing to pull? Seeing not, then I would move that in consideration of the consent agenda items listed on the May 22nd, 2024 agenda. The Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors received the following items. 1, environmental planning, section 28 permits, April 2024. 2, administration receipts and expenses, April 2024. 3 has already been handled separately. 4, 5 minutes, GSCF minutes, February 20th, 2024, and April 30th, 2024, and 6 media media articles and GSCA press release. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Gregg and Member Mackey, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Moving on, we have a presentation today from Baker Tilly.
Especially with the dull light when I'm realizing that wasn't before COVID. So, in your agenda package, you have attachment number 8, and it comprises pages 42 to 70 of your agenda. And that is a draft financial statement. I'd like to offer my sort of high-level highlights or comments. And then I'd like to focus most of my words on the changes in accounting policy that we have this year. And for those of you that are not familiar yet, you will be familiar because when your auditors present the draft financial statements for each of your municipalities, these are reports that affect everyone in the public sector. So has anyone seen their draft statements for 2023 yet? I know our office doesn't. Anyway, if you haven't heard about it yet, it's coming, so we'll talk about it today. So in terms of my highlights on the financial statement, so when you look at comparison to budget actual in last year, there were some pretty modest variances. So you'll note that accumulated surplus was up about 224,000, cash and investments about 103,000, revenue was about 160 over budget. An annual surplus this year was 181,000, and last year was actually a deficit of 113,000. So all good, and no major variances there. In terms of audit issues, we did not find any management butter points. The differences we found on the unadjusted error schedule very small, like $5,200 compared to material value of 100,000, very small amounts. And certainly Serenity and Allison and Tim, amazing to work with. My staff love to work on very Sauble because it's organized, and that has not certainly changed from prior years. So on to the accounting changes. So there were 2 major changes this year, and they're described in note 2 to the financial statement. I don't know whether any of you dove into that over the long weekend. I hope you had something better to do, but two different changes there. And the first is financial instruments. So that's a new handbook section. For those of you that are used to reviewing financial statements, that are under NPO standards or under private enterprise standards, financial instruments have been a standard within those areas of the handbook for many years now. But this is the first year that municipalities and anyone under the public sector accounting board had to them. And what that means is that the investments have to be recorded at fair market value. In the past, we always had them at cost, and we always disclosed the fair market value so that you knew whether they were up and down in the market. But now, on the statement of financial position, they have to show at fair market value. And then you may have noticed on page 8 or page 51 of your agenda package, a brand new statement that you've never seen before, and it's called Statement of Remeasurement Gains and Losses. And what that does is it shows you what part of the balance of the investments relates to unrealized gains. So as we all know, investments go up and down every day, every minute. So now with the new standards, at December 31st, we have to show those at fair market value, which means that there are some unrealized gains in those figures. And so there was about $42,000 that's shown as part of the value of the investment portfolio, which actually isn't cash. That was just what the unrealized gains were at December 31st. And of course, that number goes up and down. And it's not going to hit your actual statement of operations, which is the statement that we all care most about, until their actual realized gains. So until those investments are sold and that gain is actually realized in cash in the bank. So I can't answer answer the question of why the accounting gods decided we needed to have this standard. As I say, it's been common in many different areas of the accounting standards for years, but the public sector has finally adopted it in 2023 year. So that was the first change in accounting policy. The second one is related to asset retirement obligations. So this is something we've talked to Tim and Allison at length about. And what this relates to is that there are certain acts out there that we have legal obligation to rectify issues with our tangible capital assets. The best example is asbestos. Any building built before the mid-90s probably has asbestos unless it's already been abated or dealt with or renovated at some point in time. What the new standard says is that we should be setting that asset retirement obligation up as a liability. The accounting industry is really interesting because you set up the liability and you actually increase the cost or the value of the tangible capital asset, which seems a little counterintuitive, but what the accounting gods wanted was so that you could write that liability off over time, just like you're writing off the amortization. They would call it accretion if you were writing off an asset retirement obligation over time. And of course, as part of the annual audit, we now have to, talk to Tim and Allison and say, hey, have you identified any new asset retirement obligations we didn't know about last year? More importantly, have you abated or dealt with any of those asset retirement obligations so that we can make sure we get them off the books? So through that process, we only identified about $10,000, and that was related to the potential asbestos that's in this building. And so such a small amount compared to our materiality of $100,000, we've actually put that on the unadjusted error schedule, and we've not set up the liability, added it to tangible capital assets. For the dollars involved, it doesn't make sense. And certainly when this building gets renovated and that asbestos gets dealt with, it will no longer be on the unadjusted error schedule going forward. So those were the two things I really wanted to make sure to highlight for all of you, because they are brand new concepts and accounting standards that we got to deal with this year. And because of those new standards, much of our municipal work has been delayed this year, but very solid. We kept right on track to be here and presenting to you before the end of June. So I'd love to answer any questions you might have. If they're really detailed and down in the weeds, I might need help from Allison, but I'd love to answer any questions you may have. I know you've had the financial statements for a few days now.
Thank you for the overview. Are there any questions? Member Mackey?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, who are these accounting gods that you refer to? What level of government is bringing all of this in?
So the accounting standards are by CPA Canada, so it's the national board, and it sets the accounting standards right across the country so that all provinces are consistent. I personally am a member of both CPA Canada and the Ontario branch, CPA Ontario. But it is a federal body that sets the accounting standards.
So they get to increase the amount of work that is required by members that is actually added onto the tax dollar.
Well, I guess there was a little bit of extra time on all of our part, no doubt, particularly in all of the different notes that needed to be updated in the financial statements. But it shouldn't affect, the asset retirement obligations of $10,000 should not affect, the amount that's charged to each of the municipalities as your municipal levy. I suppose at some point when that gets dealt with, it may affect you, but not until it's actually cashed.
Not like
It's
a
not,
budget.
I mean, this isn't a criticism of you, it's the,
Of course, I
it's just
completely
I wanted to know
understand.
who this upper body was that you referred to as God. Thanks.
It's not like upper tier governments ever put more on lower bodies. Member Maxwell.
I have a question, but I'm not sure if it applies to Gray Sauble here, but it says changes in accounting policies on page 12. Financial instruments, foreign currency, translation.
Yeah, so those two sections go hand in hand. You can't implement one without the other. For Gray Sauble, there's really, it's all pretty much dealt in Canadian dollars. There were no US dollar investments, really don't make any purchases in US dollars. So we've included that just so that the reader of the financial statement knows that we consider that handbook section, but it really doesn't affect the authority or any of our municipal clients to any great extent.
Any other questions? Member Briggs.
Thanks, through you, Chair, thanks for the presentation. And this is probably a question to staff. Most of the surplus has been driven by, there's about an $80,000 donation that we had to budget for, and operating grants being increased, which drove most of that surplus. So I'm just wondering if staff can speak to those difference makers and how they just kind of maybe roll over into 2024. Yeah, it's unfortunate with the changes in the PSAT rules, but we're certainly hit more so at the city than at the Conservation Authority. And it definitely seemed to be a solution to a problem that didn't really exist, because when you consider who's reading your financial statements as a municipality, it's the province, that's about it. So it's unfortunate to see that extra little bit of work that has come about.
Thank you, and then I'll start, then I'll defer to Allison, but when we talk about the donation, the $80,000, $82,000 donation, the bulk of that is actually a property that we acquired through donation. So in terms of how does that roll over, it has no cash value per se. It's added to our property holdings, and that one's at Isaac Lake in Southwest Peninsula. But Allison, I would defer to you on anything.
And further to that, it was not part of the budget, so the other part of the surplus that we don't budget for, but is in our financial statements every year, is the depreciation that contributes to the surplus, and it's actually added back.
Did I see an increase in operating grants year over and above budgeted too?
We did get some WECI funding, yes, that we had not budgeted for. It was phase 2 of the WECI project. And there were some stewardship grants that we received as well.
Okay, we're setting to just utilize those funds this year? Oh, yeah, okay.
Member Maxwell.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just not sure how this fits, of course, but the purchasing policies that are in Gray Sauble, they go by, are they tied at all to this foreign currency transaction policy? The reason, I'm just wondering, because I know at our municipality, it came up about, you have to be mindful of Buy America policies and NAFTA and all these other things now. So I didn't know if that fits in at all.
It doesn't. What the new standard on foreign currency translation says is that if you have significant dollars in US or other foreign currencies, it has to be disclosed separately. And of course, the authority doesn't have that, so we don't. As part of the audit, we consider the procurement bylaw of the authority and make sure that, all of the proper steps are being followed. But, and I can't think of, we don't look at every single transaction, but I can't think of a foreign transaction we've ever come across. I don't know there's anything, like sometimes there's little software packages that are bought out of the US. I know we have one at the office for something in our secure emails, but we haven't seen very much authority at all that's in foreign dollars.
Thank you, okay.
Anything else? Seeing nothing, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you staff for obviously assisting. And I would move that whereas section 38(1) of the Conservation Authorities Act states that every authority shall cause its accounts and transactions to be audited annually by a person licensed under the Public Accounting Act 2004, and shall ensure that the annual audit is prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for local governments recommended by the Public Sector Accounting Board of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada as they exist from time to time. That the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors accept and receive the draft financial report for 2023 as prepared by Baker Tilly Licensed Public Accounts. May I have a seconder, please? Member Brown, Member Bell. All in favor? Thank you. Moving on. Looks like we're going to have some dam adventures, which sounds like fun.
Okay, if we, are we okay if I do that? Pictures show up better. You're scared of the dark. Okay. Everybody see me online?
John, Jen, are you okay? Yes, looks like it.
Good.
Thanks, John.
So I'm gonna give an annual update on how the dams went this year. And last year I started calling them dam adventures because they were. And then this year topped it again to be more adventures. So one of the challenges we had this year, March, we had no snow, so we had no runoff. So that threw off the timing of all of our installs. We had to deal with things quicker, get things in as soon as we could. And then April hit us with all the rain, so then we started having to pull things back out again. So I know the field staff's not happy with me, but that's kind of the realities of what happened with us. Okay. Still laying on me. So just here's a watershed map showing the different dam locations on our properties. The green ones are ones pretty much managed by Great Sauble staff. And then I'm going to say the brown ones there, they're mostly ducks unlimited dams, so they would manage them if they needed any kind of maintenance to them. So we have roughly, we have 6 dams that we actually maneuver the boards in and out of every year. So Burford Lake, as I mentioned, we installed it March 5th. That was the earliest I had on record since 1979. So it's always one we have to try to capture all the water that's in the lake before it leaves. It's a very small drainage basin, so it's very dependent on snow melt and rainfall for us to capture it as high as we can without flooding people on the opposite shore. So we put it in on the 5th. We finished putting it in on the 22nd. So typically we put 3 logs in at first, and then we finish off the 4th log once the lake levels are high enough that it will flow over all the logs. Unfortunately, we had to start removing logs on the 16th, and again another row on the 24th of April. And then we started the process again, put them back in April 30th and finished it off May 7th. Just a small dam, but we do remove all these boards every fall just to make sure there's no issues with flooding on the lake. Mill Dam. This year, we actually, fortunately or unfortunately, we had no nesting swans in the pond. So this happened several years ago. We started having a mature pair of swans nesting within the mill pond area. We had to rush to get the dam in before they actually established their nest. So this year, we could delay the process a little bit, which was really nice because of the rainfall we were getting. So we started the install on May 7th. And by install, I mean we dropped the two main gates of the dam. The one gate is put down completely, and then the other gate is up a little bit to allow water to still pass downstream. So we're not cutting off all the flow downriver. And then once the flows in the river itself get low enough that we can actually close this north gate off completely, then I can start to sleep at night, so I don't have to worry about it. But right now, that one gate is still up about 3 inches. It's getting close to the point that we can actually drop it off. We're just, might happen either Friday or maybe Monday, depending on how much rain we get in the next couple of days. So far that install has went well. If the swans had come back, then we would have had quite a nightmare trying to manage that dam this year. I'm just trying to beat them to getting the water out and then dealing with all the flows we would receive afterwards.
John, sorry, John, I think we're gonna, if we're allowed, we can just take some questions along the way. Anything going back, member Mackey?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. John, with these dams that we're putting boards in, taking boards out, is there any particular liability from a flooding standpoint if we don't respond in a timely enough fashion?
There could be, like there's definitely, we'll receive complaints. It could cause some damage to docks and stuff upstream. There's not any houses in the immediate area that could be a problem. It's more nuisance stuff, but it's also, you're trying to maintain a good corporate image by trying to minimize the complaints and trying to manage the water levels as stable as possible. So we do communicate with the landowners upstream of the dam through an email process that we let them know when we're putting the dam in and when we're taking it out, and if we're having any challenges down there. So I typically advise them first thing in the spring when we're trying to find the right setting that be patient with us, because it is a tricky thing to do.
Is there a lot of staff time required? Like if you know you're having a significant weather event, are you actively removing boards in at certain times if you know there's going to be a...
It depends on the dam. So the mill dam, it's in town. I live in town. It's a 5-minute drive for me to come down and raise the gate a little bit or lower it a little bit. Also to go down and check to see what kind of debris is going, is this collecting at the dam. We also have a sensor at the dam that reports online, so I can see water levels. There's just a little bit of delay to that. So if we have a heavy rain event, like 2 inches, I'm going to be down at that dam anyways, raising the gate, because I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have to the upstream. You got the immediate 2 inches in the pond, and then you got all the water that's pushing in as well. So it is, this dam especially, the mill dam, you just need to be conscious of the how quickly it can rise. Our other dams, basically, they have a little more forgiveness to them, so we don't have to be on them right away. So Burford Lake would be one where we would run up there if we knew there's a big rain event coming and remove one log out of the fort and just help to relieve the issues. The mill dam is just a little trickier because it can come up really quick, just because the stormwater puts into it.
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question from the internet?
Yes?
I'm noticing that some of we talk about replacing logs, and it looks like some of the dams that we manage, the logs drop in and kind of fill the dam from or fill the opening from the bottom up. And then I'm looking at the picture of the mill dam, which looks like we're closing it off from the top down. Is there a functional difference in the designs of dams, of the dams that we manage, or of the complexity of managing them depending on those different styles?
For the most part, like the mill dam is the only one that we have that is actually a gate system. So that's where you can pump the gates down. The original setup of the dam was just that way. It could have been a situation where they were installing boards or logs individually. It was just at some point in history, there was an opportunity to put in hydraulics, and that seemed to work well for them. I've seen some old pictures where the hydraulics weren't there and they would lift the gates with chains. And that didn't work out too well when they didn't get down there during a flood event and the dam was washing over. So gates are nice when you conceal them at the bottom. This one, the concrete's actually up a little bit, so that's good. It's not right down into the bottom of the stream bed. But logs work well as, you know, they're for remote sites. They work quite well. That help?
Yes, thank you.
Carry on.
Okay. Bogner Marsh Dam number 2. This is not the main dam in the marsh. This is one that's right by Grade Road 18. So staff generally, they drive up and down that road all the time, so they take a couple of boards with them, throw them in, and then just keep going on with their day. So this year we started the process March 26th, and we ended it April 4th. And then we started, we moved about 2 logs for April 16th. Again, that was a rain event that was coming. And then we put them back in on May 10th. So fairly easy dam for us to manage, nice and easy to get to. It just creates some wetland features upstream. Rankin Dam, usually this is one of our most challenging dams that we have. We started the install April 5th, which was the second earliest I had on record since 1979. April 2nd was the earliest, and that was in 2000. We installed the whole dam that day, and the water came up and was going over the logs fairly quickly afterwards, so it was a really good install. We felt good about it, and then the rains came and we had to start going back and remove the logs. So on April 8th, we removed 2 logs from Center Bay. And the 16th, we removed 2 logs from the East Bay. And then April 24th, we removed another log from Center Bay. And that's where it's sitting right now. It's still maintaining good water level on the Burford Lake itself. This is a chart that I update from the sensors we have. And if you're just looking over here on the far side, the right-hand side, the blue line is the lake level, Burford Lake, so that's taken at the bridge location, and the black line is the level at the dam. The red line that goes across is our target for water levels for the lake, so we're still up, you know, 6 inches above what our target is. So we're just waiting for the lake to come down a little bit more before we start reinstalling the ponds. So it was just one of those years where you had all the people on the lake were getting a little anxious that the lake was coming down so fast, and we got it in a good time, and then we just did some bad weather. It's unfortunate. This is one of the dams that's a little trickier to get back to. It's just, you can't drive back there with a car and make sure you're taking the proper vehicles and stuff. Inglis Falls Dam, so that's just up here at Inglis Falls. Every year we just put 2 logs in each bay, so staff makes sure that on May 7th. Everything went well. Glendennan Dam, that's going to be treated a little differently this year. We have all the old logs that we're going to change out. We purchased the logs, got them all ready, and we're going to try to change out 2 bays this year out of 4 bays. So that means we have to remove all the logs from those bays, which we hope goes well. It'll draw the pond down substantially, and when the pond is down, we're hoping to get in and survey. You can see the bottom picture here. Survey the amount of gravel we have there to see if it's something that we need to look at removing in the next couple of years. It will be eligible for 50% grant funding from the province, and we did do that back in 1999, so it is something that we've done in the past. So we're just going to take advantage of the pond being down with the logs out. And then next year we'll look at whether or not we'll be applying for funding while we take the other set of logs out and draw it down, and then we'll have a process to get at that gravel and dredge it out. And I'll be talking about the dam in a little more detail shortly. But here's a nice picture of the ice sheet That's the whole purpose of the dam, is to create nice ice sheet in the winter time to block any sheet ice that comes down the Beaver River and hold it as one big unit, so it doesn't go downstream into Clarksburg and cause flooding. Okay, so that's my dam adventures this year.
Are there any questions regarding that report? Member Bell?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, John, for this. A couple of times in your presentation, and maybe others around the board know the answer to this, but you said a couple of times that there's sensors on
Yes.
the barn, on the dams, and I thought, did you have sight lines? Did you have land markers? But your technology is much better than that, so can you just tell me what's a sensor? Because on the one chart, there was a great deviation in height, so it's obvious to measure.
Yes, so those sensors have, since we put them in, have been a really good help on how to understand what's going on there. So at the dam itself, I have a sensor that it's selling for, so it reports water levels every hour to a website, and I capture that and make a graph out of it. So if you went online on our website to our watershed conditions map, we have a map that has all those links to that data, so it's available. And at the bridge, we have a similar sensor, same idea, it reports hourly. And so at the bridge, we have an old manual gauge that we're actually using as a reference. And we compared what the lake should be at that gauge to where the dam is. And we're able to then estimate, how much difference there's between the dam and the lake. So when we pull the water at the dam is definitely much lower than at the lake. There's a bit of a gradient thing going on with the water's just slow to change in the different levels. So that's what you see with that winter. Once we take it out in the winter time, the levels are much lower at the dam, that black line. So it's been very useful for us, and it's been helpful for the people on the lake themselves to see that, we have a handle on what's going on, we know what's going on. It's just when one of the sensors needs rebooting, then I get the emails. Sensor's not working, what are you going to do? When are you going to fix it? So, and then right now is the urgent time to keep an eye on that, because we're still trying to set the dam up. So once the dam's completely in, and then we're not having any kind of crazy weather patterns, then the changes in level are much less. So, and we have those sensors. That's part of that 25 gauge network that we have. It's additional sensors on top of whatever the federal government does. So they're very handy. And then we have one of those at the mill dam too. And, Skinner's Marsh Dam, we have one, a sensor. And other ones are just mostly for nervous systems.
Just before we move on, what's the life expectancy of that sensor?
They haven't died yet. I bought them about 5 years ago. So I'm happy with that, because these ones are not expensive ones. I think it was $300 to buy the sensor, and it's $350 a year for the subscription. That's very reasonable for that kind of equipment.
Member Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, John, for the presentation. Building on what Member Bell was saying about the sensors, have you looked at well, I know you haven't looked at it, but I'm just wondering, downstream from Clendenin's Dam, the Ammonard Dam works on a bladder system, do you believe?
Yeah.
Has it been researched to make your life easier by putting a bladder system in with sensors?
Bladder system is very expensive and a little problematic. I know they have issues with it leaking, so they have a hard time. They have a system set up that automatically pumps up the bladder when the water level or something changes. They have a sensor down there for water level. I can't access it, but bladder system would be very pricey.
Okay.
These dams, these are probably the most economical way to run dams, just to remove that boards. It's just time consuming. Okay. Oh, I'd love to have a button I can push for the mill dam. It's tricky because the mill dam, even on the weekend, I had to make an adjustment there, and I went to lower the gate because water level was slowly coming down. And there was something under the gate, so I couldn't lower it. So I had to pump the gate up 2 feet to let everything pass to put it back down. So it's, even if you had a button somewhere, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Member Becky?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And John, have we ever looked at hydro generation at any of our dams? Or feasibility of hydro generation? I know there's a number of private dams throughout the watershed that are making money, through hydro generation. I'm just wondering if that's ever been looked at from a Great Sauble standpoint.
I haven't. I know at one point the mill dam in Inglis Falls was looked at, but they determined it just couldn't produce enough water to make the system work efficiently. But we have had interesting Glendenning Dam. However, the restrictions that they want us to put on the dam for them to operate it wasn't compatible with our use of the dam. So it kind of stalled. So they haven't come back to us. Other issues were getting the power lines to the dam. So Glendenning was the main purpose of it originally, was a power dam.
Yeah, it served Clarksburg and Thornbury originally.
Yeah. So other than that, our dams are too small.
And second question, if I may, would it be possible sometime, do you have a map of all the privately owned dams throughout our watershed? I've been asked a number of times in regards to private dams and the liability that they pose to the landowner if they're not properly maintained, and people wanting to possibly take them out, and what is the remediation of old dams that no longer serve a purpose?
Yeah, so there's our dams, which we try to maintain, and then there's, the province has a dam at Thornbury, and then OPG has a dam. But private dams, we've attempted to make a layer, so we kind of have some information that's not complete, but we don't really have a good handle on the status of the dams at those locations. Back in the 90s, we had some summer students go around and document some of the dams. But that was a provincial grant that we had at the time.
So just from a watershed standpoint, these small private dams, would it be better if they were gone for the overall health of the watershed?
My personal opinion, yes. But sometimes there is some advantages to the locations. Like thinking of like ones like the Rankin Dam that we have, it's there for wildlife and stuff, and it also helps to stabilize flows during flood events or spring runoff. So depending on the size of the impoundment that it makes, it can be an advantage to preventing flooding. But small dams, generally, they're a high risk to releasing quickly and releasing sediment, and they also impede fish movement and stuff. So it's, sometimes a dam or a pond on a intermittent system is something that people use for irrigating their crops and stuff. So it all depends on the purpose of the dam and impoundment. I keep visualizing these beautiful trout streams with the dam on it. I guess
Well, that's what I'm,
Member Dick?
I'm just thinking of this question during the conversation, so I'm not sure how much you'll have to say on it, but is there, especially with the mill dam, I know it sounds a relationship problematic or possibly beneficial that the dam could play in terms of managing garbage? Coincidentally, I paddled the river from Harrison Park to grain elevators on the weekend, and there's a lot of garbage in the river, so it just triggered my memory when you said the dam was blocked and you had to let something flush out before you could move it. So I don't know. I know there can be biotic factors blocking the dam as well, but I don't know. Like there used to be paddle over shopping carts, for example. So I don't know if
It
that's
wasn't that. It's normally woody debris, like sticks and logs and stuff. One challenge we have is some people will cut trees down and then leave them to float down the mill dam. So that can be a problem, but I don't remember seeing a lot of garbage, but we get a lot of algae we'll collect at the dam. So staff try to keep it clear the best they can, especially for the weekends when people are coming to visit the site, that it's not all plugged up with that floating algae. But as far as plastics and stuff, I can see them out there.
Not seeing anything else, I just have one quick question. You indicated at the start of the presentation about the Ducks Unlimited dams as well. Is there any correlation, cooperation, relationship that we have with that organization? Because obviously, like Dr. Marsh, they are actually quite close to each other. So is there any kind of crossover relationship that's involved with those?
Well, they originally put those dams in, and I think we had a 20-year agreement with them that they would maintain it. Unfortunately, those agreements have expired, so we're working on with them to renew the agreements in some form. But they are mostly small dams, like small structures. But we have a good working relationship with them.
Great. Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, sorry, I got another one.
Oh.
Gloria, I'm gonna need your help here. I don't want to accidentally hit something and turn off the sure. Ready? So as promised, I'm going to talk a little more detail about the Clendena Dam. Something we've been working through over at least the last 5 years is updating our operations and maintenance manuals for our dams. And I completed this one in December, but we were kind of going to wait until I did my dam report, so we kind of flowed into it. So the idea of these reports are to create a document that I can just take and hand to a new staff person and say, read this, you should be able to understand 80% of what we're trying to do with this structure without having to read all the technical reports. So that's the intent with this. And then Gloria and her staff have made them look quite attractive. Sorry, not my style. But I'll just go through quickly the dam here. Okay, so the dam itself is located on the Beaver River. This is just upstream of the village of Clarksburg. And again, it's the purpose of the dam is to reduce or prevent ice jamming through Clarksburg downstream, primarily the sheet ice that used to collect down there. Unfortunately, it doesn't really do anything with the frazzle ice. The frazzle ice still comes through the system and can still collect downstream in Clarksburg. So the pond's just not big enough to trap the frazzle ice. It just goes right underneath the ice sheet. So the dam itself, it's roughly 10 meters high. The whole crest is 365 meters long, and the very top is about 6 meters wide across the dam. There's 4 bays to it, and each bay typically has 4 stop logs in it permanently. Those are the logs that we're trying to change out now. And then for summer flows, we add two logs to each bay to maintain a summer level. That helps the fishway work better, and it just makes better features for the waterfowl and stuff there. We have 2 different types of winch systems. We have the electric winch that you can see the background there. So that's quite nice. It's just push a button and it'll help raise the logs once we're hooked onto it. We did have a situation a couple years ago where we had to use the old manual winches. Staff said they work quite well, but they are always on site, as well as the electric winches. And we did get some grant funding to replace those winches. The other thing we have at this site is the fishway goes down the south side of the embankment, and can see below here, it's a baffle system. So it's a tunnel with baffles, and at the bottom of each baffle there's a hole there to allow the water to go through and the fish to swim through. Very similar to the idea that the mill dam has for a baffle system for the fishway. So it works quite well, and just so you know, if you see the fishway is closed at the top end, then that's because we've been directed by M&R staff to close it, because they want to manage the number of salmon that go upstream. So it's not our decision to do that, but it's direction from M&R. So the dam itself, the idea is to create the ice sheet to prevent the sheet ice from going downstream. The dam also collects a lot of trees and logs and stuff that come down the river, so that's a problem for us. A good year, like this past year, we had no spring runoff, so we didn't have a lot of material collected in the dam. But we have had situations where we've had to bring in a large crane to lift this large log out of the dam. We were very fortunate that year that it did lift it, because we were almost at the point of what we knew we needed it out of there. And we have to get the logs up and down. So one of the challenges we have for that site, but it's not uncommon for us to need a high or a crane. There's just a picture of some of the logs that are going to go in, and then the background there, you see the railway tracks, and in between that are the openings to each one of the bays that will drop the logs down. So when we do inspections or maintenance, we're always checking the earth embankment itself, looking for any kind of slumpage or holes in it, or any kind of locations where the water may be piping through. That's bad, so we want to make sure that we deal with that quickly. We also, within the reservoir, just make sure that if we see anything floating coming down towards the dam, that we get ready to capture it in the dam. And then we maintain the fishway, keep the trash rack open. Usually after every large summer rain event or springtime, the trash rack gets plugged, so we make sure that the fishway is working best we can. There is a manhole inside of our storage building that's there that we need to check annually to make sure that there's nothing unusual going on in there. Usually there's a bit of water, but we don't want to see a pipe full of water. And then make sure that the equipment that's on site is working well. Not a lot of painting needs to be done. It's mostly galvanized railings. And then you can see the picture of the railing here. Problem with having the high hose there, clearing debris is sometimes to hit the railings. They bend them and break them, so we have to deal with those quickly. And the concrete, we're always looking for any new cracks within the concrete and repairing anything that's exposed, especially where the railings go down inside the concrete. We have to make sure that we prevent that quickly to keep it from freezing and expanding. So emergency operations at the dam, when we say emergency, it's the dam itself we're worried about. So if there's a sudden slumpage that it's obvious that the dam is going to go, we will quickly remove the boards as fast as we can. It is a slow process. We'll notify M&R staff for the Thornbury Dam so they know that there's extra water coming down. We'll notify the town of the mountains that things are happening. And we'll also make sure that we go downstream to check to make sure that any fishermen or anybody else using the water system between us and Thornbury are advised that water levels are going to come up. They won't come up like a wave of water, so it's not like, just, we've got this surfing opportunity. Water will rise kind of gradually, and then it'll go back down again once the pond's drained. So it's not a big pond. It's just one that it's big enough to do the ice sheet that we need. We have some relevant files that we list, some fun facts. The original construction was in 1860 of the dam. So just different reports of flooding situations and cost benefit analysis of doing the dam. We have a chart in here of the different log settings and how much flow that they can pass. The highlighted ones are summer and winter settings. And then I got a little excerpt from the dam safety study that talks a little bit about the history and some of the past flooding. They have a record of flooding Clarksburg back in April 21st, 1869, so that's kind of neat to have records back that far. Then some historic photos, and then just bear with me. I have just a short video to show. Okay, so at the dam itself, there's this little kiosk with this sign on here that was sponsored with Town of Blue Mountains, Sauble, and the Water Once Beaver River Watershed Initiative. So they helped to fund this sign. And so it's got some of the neat pictures on it, but there's, every so often I'm sitting at home, I'm just kind of Googling on YouTube different things. So I Googled Bannon Dam. So I come across this video, which it's going to work. I could play the music, but it's kind of irritating. So this area that we're flying over right now, that's the spillway, the emergency spillway. We're approaching an area to the south where we would place the gravel that we dredged it. So that's where it went back in 1989 or 1999. So just an aerial view of the pond itself, the opening to the fishway, and then the little structure that's on top of the dam. The spillway, you can see the parking lot area, the lane that comes to the parking lot, and then downstream is the township bridge. And then you can see the spillway again flows into the itself. So just something that I found on the internet, not my toy, but it's kind of nice to try things like that. Yeah, so that's what I have for Glendenning. That's just our operational management and maintenance manual.
Thanks, John, very comprehensive, that's great. Any questions? Member Dick?
For you, my apologies, I didn't quite catch the purpose of moving gravel. I have some guesses.
So the whole idea is to capture a big ice sheet. So as the gravel's filling in, it's taking up surface area. So it's just making this area.
Okay, it's getting on. There's enough gravel.
Yeah, so that's the concern. So you want to make sure that you've slowed the water down enough that it forms the ice sheet quickly, which it's still doing. So there's no immediate threat to it. It's just we may have an opportunity next year when we're rocking pond again that you might want to time doing the work. Then again, we could delay it to another time. It just means we have to go longer months again.
Thank you.
It's not an urgent thing. It's just something that's permanent.
Oh, proactive.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Member?
Just a quick question, and thanks for the presentation, John. We were there a couple of Octobers ago on a perfect day hiking, and the Beaver River certainly has some pretty good flow at different times of the year, and you're talking about logs. Do we do, as part of our trail management and risk management, like tour that area? Right now it's ash trees, obviously, that are first and foremost to mind, but in terms of other trees too that perhaps strategically could be cut or to reduce the enhanced risk of logs becoming trapped in that dam?
Yeah, so I look after the dam itself, and then Lance gets to look after the trails and the trees in the parking lot, so I'm not sure if that will come up soon later on in the meeting.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything right now to target trees that might fall into the pond. And most of the problem that way would be some more sort of the trail system itself.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like parts of the trail system, is it 10th Side Road is over there?
Yes.
Yeah, like some of that has really good flows through it.
Yeah.
And it's heavily treated. So that's where I was wondering about. So.
Just a
I mean,
comment.
beavers can do it too, but.
Yeah, about the view there. Another video that I got on YouTube. It's an autumn one, so they actually start at the dam and they fly upstream to see all the trees and all the beautiful colors. It's quite nice.
And I would just note, since we're in public session, that drones are legal on Chris Sauble's properties. It's for anybody in the public that's looking to go fly their drone there.
These were back 6 years ago. The videos were done. So I didn't do it.
no other questions, I actually have one. I maybe should have asked this at the end of your dam presentation, not your event presentation. So, with regards to safety, is there any incumbent responsibility or liability concern? A lot of dams have barriers above them, so to make sure that people are aware going in, this could be dangerous, to obviously try to stop swimmers or paddle boats to get into the dam scenario. Do we have a responsibility to put that above the dams?
We have sign now. It's tricky with some of the remote sites that we have to do like a buoy system.
Yeah.
And it also comes down to the use too. So if we had high-speed boats, then definitely we're gonna have stuff like that. Most of our stuff is kayaks and canoes. So it's not, they can see the dam coming and then again with the signage. But having said that, anything can happen.
Well, just think of today's litigious society that when you talk about upper tier governments before, tending to put in legislation that tends to be way beyond on the safe side of things. And I'm really surprised that we're not required to literally put like buoys across to say, if you go beyond here, now, you're on your own. Signage is understandable, but there's not actually a physical barrier saying danger beyond this point.
Yeah, so, and there is those requirements, but it comes down to that level of risk too, is we don't have a high use of those dams, that it's a high risk. But if people suddenly were there all the time, then we might have to change what we're doing there. It could be more signage, could be fencing. Anytime I go out and inspect the dams, I'm always looking for any kind of signs of somebody doing something that we weren't anticipating.
I was just gonna mention that by Beaver River, we ran into, especially at Slaptown, you can run into the Navigation Act, and you run into the Portage Act, and you run into all this stuff, and it's pretty much impossible to manage around water for some reason.
Agreed. Everything tends to be protection.
Yeah.
I mean, mitigation is difficult because people are going to do what people are going to do. It all comes back to liability and protection through your own mechanism. So, yeah, I'm sure as long as we're meeting legislation, then it's fine. Okay, that's everything else. So, thank you, John. Okay, appreciate it. Moving on to business items 1B, water management. CAO Tim Lethier is going to present this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in March, the board received a delegation on water quality within the town of Blue Mountains, more specifically the Craig Leaf area of Nottawasaga Bay, to do with runoff coming down through a series of water courses, specifically water courses 5 through 14, into Nottawasaga Bay and causing sedimentation concerns for the residents there. Following that delegation, the board asked staff to consider the requests in the delegation and to provide a report back to the board. And so that is what's being presented right now and being prepared. I'll start with the big picture goals notes, and then if the board would like more detail verbally, I can provide that. And then the report has all of the finer details. So big picture is that several concerns were brought forward, mostly to do with runoff and erosion causing sediment-laden runoff. Several requests about monitoring the situation and taking actions to remedy the situation. We, as an organization, have looked through our mandate and our programming and considered the requests in light of our mandate and our programming. Most of the items, if they do fall anywhere within our mandate, would be category 3. So as the board is aware, these are not mandatory programs, but rather programs that we can do if the board considers it advisable, and those are funded by one or more municipalities through an agreement with those municipalities.
For the things that are being requested at a very high, broad level, they're beyond the current staff and financial resources of the authority to tackle. So if we were to take those on, it would require either a redistribution of how we're spending our resources right now, or more resources to cover that. And yeah, that's the very high level. So if the board would like to hear more detailed review back verbally on each of the concerns, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, they're in the report, and the report is presented for the board's information.
First, I have a comment. It's a very good report. Thank you for the staff for that. It's a very good report. Right.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Tim, for the report. It came back as I hoped it would. So the bottom line is the sediment coming from what was presented to us, the sediment will run off a lot because of development within Blue Mountains. Blue Mountains could enter into some sort of agreement with Sauble if they wanted to mitigate some of that runoff. Is that correct?
I don't.
Through number 3.
Through the chair, I think if Blue Mountains was interested in better understanding the issue, that's something that certainly, with appropriate resources, Grace Sauble could possibly undertake. Mitigating is a different thing altogether, though, because what we're looking at is a series of privately owned properties, and we can't force mitigation on private property. We have no mechanism to do that. So there is an opportunity that I've highlighted in here for stewardship, and that would come down to, again, funding, but also willing landowners saying, yes, we recognize an issue here, we're willing to do work in the riparian areas of these streams to help mitigate that. But there's no mechanism for Grace Sauble to enforce that.
The municipality through site plan control would be able to remedy some of that on private property, or at least development properties.
Yeah, I think with new developments, there's an opportunity for that. I think retroactively,
Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been expressed before, but just for myself and hopefully others will benefit, there's a legal difference between when the water is within Grace Sauble and when it hits the bay. The Ministry of Oceans, there's a difference of when that transpires. Who gets involved? So in this report, it's pretty clear the two things you mentioned, finances, personnel, and trying to get involved with something after. But when this sediment that was shown to us is out there in that water, we don't have anything to say about that. Is that a proper take on my part?
No, I think Grace Sauble's watershed and our jurisdiction extends out into the bay.
Into the water itself?
Yes, it's just the pollution issue is beyond the scope of our mandate.
Okay.
So through stewardship, which is a Category 3 program, we're trying to improve the watershed, and we can do that by working with willing landowners. So currently that's largely agricultural-based landowners, so we work on things like cover crops, riparian plantings, barnyard diversions, keeping cattle out of streets, things like that. So agriculture seems to be the areas where we see the biggest impacts on our watershed, broad scheme. And so there are mechanisms or common tactics in place that you can say, yes, if we do these, we know that these are going to improve water quality downstream. And so if people are willing to work with us, we find grants to do that. Similar tactics could be applied in a more urbanized situation like this. Some of the challenges are, there's a lot more pavement, and if that's going directly into a storm sewer, that becomes hard to mitigate through stewardship, right? But again, we still need willing landowners to private development. But so it's not that we don't, it's not within our area of jurisdiction, it's not within our mandated jurisdiction, if that makes sense. Like, it's not within our regulatory control. We can't force it.
Okay. Member Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair. So, Jim, when I read through it, it made reference to the municipality to create a bylaw to deal with these. I was just wondering, can the municipality reach out to Grace Sauble for advice on how to create or how to draft a bylaw that kind of meets the concerns of these various issues that come up?
I think we would be happy to assist the town with any questions that they had if the town as an entity wanted to move forward with this.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that we have the answers, but we can certainly take a look at
If
it.
you're more interested than I will, okay. Thank you.
Member Shaw?
Sorry. I also wanted to share my appreciation for the thorough analysis here. I think it's helpful not only for this situation, but I think for those of us that are still, I think, trying to better understand the scope of the conservation authority's work and, what we do and don't have authority over. Flood control and erosion can reach into a lot of areas. So I I found this to be super helpful, just also kind of as a resource for myself, I think, going forward. And as we get questions from the public on things that might not be specifically like this issue, but might touch some of these areas. So thank you for the staff who put the work into creating this report back for us. My second question, and we've got folks from Blue Mountains around the table, so I'm sure you can pass this on. But I note that the recommendations is to share this back to Miss Spence. I wondered if we also should be sending a copy of this to the town of Blue Mountains as well, so that they are aware that we have looked at this thoroughly and the areas where there might be action opportunities, they have this information.
I have no objection to that from the staff level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, thank you, Jen. Member Daly?
If I might build on the past two comments, I wonder if other municipalities would also benefit from this information, given our rivers and shorelines that ties them together.
Yes, it does sound like a very good idea. And you're right, Jen, it was a very, very comprehensive and very explanatory report that did help a lot. So I think it would be of value to other municipalities.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, when they do stormwater management plans, it's about getting rid of the water that's going to load the site that's being examined, and then discharge it somewhere. And I understand, like, the relationship with the Category 3 in Town of Blue Mountains. Do we have, is there a prioritization when we chase stewardship funding, where something like this, staff would say, you know what, we see this as a higher priority, and we reach out to Town of Blue Mountains to look at funding opportunities? I understand the challenges of the private properties. It is always mystifying how somebody could have, right beside a ravine and, it's in their best interest to plant some trees and look after the ravine. But sometimes you have to certainly wax them with a mallet before they maybe get it. So in the future, is there an opportunity to kind of scale it in terms of, like, certainly we get lots of familiarity with the livestock fencing, the riparian stewardship funding, but is there funding streams that kind of would meet this type of a need in the watershed? This is what it kind of boils down to. Like, does that ever populate through the radar, and how do we prioritize it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'd have to look for a target. Right now we're building that community of agricultural landowners that wants to do these kinds of projects, and through our watershed report cards more broadly across the watershed, those agricultural areas are the areas that express the most need for that type of work through, again, looking at a broad picture. This is a very scoped picture, which is not really the kind of work that we've been doing in the past.
And then to that, have we done a recent watershed report card for some of this property, or is it in the future plans, or is it just too small and, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's too small an area for us to focus at that level.
Okay.
Okay, then the next one.
Thank you, Chair. And I may need to lean on the staff for this, but I do believe parts of this request from Pamela's Spence pertains to an area that was created under the Land Drainage Act for the developments. Am I not correct? Yeah. Did Grace have one comment on any of the, of that area?
Sorry to clarify, are you talking about the water courses that are going to be part of the municipal drain system?
Yes.
Yeah, we do comment on that. We were notified from municipality of municipal drain permits from our office to do the modification for it. And it's all tied into the larger development picture with all the subdivisions that are in that area.
And that was under the Land Drainage Act, correct?
The portion of the municipal drain that was petitioned for, yes, not the whole area.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone, Member Dave?
Through you, Chair, to staff and also senior council who attend Grey County meetings. For point number 10, creating and implementing green engineering standards, could there be relationships between that and the green building standards that are at some form of planning within at the county level right now?
There just conceivably could be, but as of the implementation of Bill 23, it's no longer within our bailiwick to even comment on. Or forbidden.
Thank you for the reminder.
Seeing no further questions or comments, I would move. Whereas the GSCA Board of Directors received a delegation from Pamela Spence on March 27, 2024 regarding sedimentation in the Craig Lake area of Nottawasaga Bay, Georgian Bay. And whereas the GSCA Board of Directors asked staff to review this information and provide a report back, that the GSDA Board of Directors accept a report back on water quality presentation for Town of Blue Mountains Report Code 017-2024 as information. Mover and seconder, please. Member Mackey, Vice Chair Dubik, all in favor. Thank you. Moving on to business items under administration, point 3, environmental planning. This is something that we're hoping to address here because it might fit into the TOES report later. We're hoping that we can cover this off here without having to go into the TOES session. So with that, I'll turn it back. I'm not sure if it's here.
Just for clarification, this will be a report back from MAC. If it stays at a high level, it can stay in open session, but if we get into any details, we'll need to mark it for close.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm providing a report back on a situation at Chesapeake Lake. We reached the conclusion of the process where we laid a charge in 2022. Through that process, navigating the court and with the landowner there, the landowner entered a guilty plea under the Conservation Authorities Act. As a result, the court imposed a fine of $1,500 and made an order for restoration for a portion of work that was done to the shoreline of Chesapeake Lake. This plea was entered on April 25th, 2024. So that wraps up that process that's been 4 years in the works.
Any questions or comments in terms of where we go with this? Seeing none. Excellent. In that case, it's the point B with the Ontario Land tribunal appeal direction, attachment 12 in your agenda.
Do you want to read the recommendation or?
Sure, I can do that. Carry forth. So whereas section 7(1) of Ontario Regulation 686/21, mandatory programs and services, the Conservation Authority is required to provide planning comments to ensure decisions made under the Planning Act are consistent with the natural hazards policies of the provincial policy statement. And whereas GSCA provided comments on a zoning bylaw amendment in the town of Blue Mountains, that was ultimately denied by the town. And whereas the applicant has appealed the town's decisions to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT, that the GSCA Board of Directors authorizes staff to participate as party in the OLT hearing process. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Carlton and Member Durst. Thank you.
Okay, so this item is related to effectively monitor and manage the risk of natural hazards as a strategic goal. For some background on this, and you'll see in the attachments that our comments on this file are in attachment 1, along with the circulation from the town and the notice of decision. So those are all part of the public record under the Planning Act. So our office was circulated a zoning bylaw amendment in November of 2023. That proposal sought to redefine the hazard and wetland zones on the property and allow for a residential use within that area. So our comments are attached. I'm not going to go through those in detail unless there's any questions about that. Our comments were not supportive of the application, as ultimately we wrote the opinion that it didn't comply with our permitting policies and also wasn't consistent with the provincial policy statement specific to natural hazard policies. Ultimately, the town refused the zoning bylaw amendment and the applicant filed an appeal to the Ontario Lands Tribunal. We were notified of the case management conference and had to make a decision as to whether we would request party status. So we retained Garrett and Bigfield as our representatives to make that request, and the request was granted on May 7th, 2024. So what we're seeking right now is just the board's endorsement to continue as a party throughout that OLT process.
Thank you. So unless there are just high-level comments or questions, that will carry this to a closed session. Is there anything? Member Mackey?
Well, I think we have a responsibility to support our staff and support the town of Blue Mountains in the decision that was made. I'm hoping that with Bill 185, it's eventually passed. This is one of the things that may be prevented if it is some of these situations are frivolous, and unfortunately we're dealing with individuals that have a lot deeper pockets than some of the municipalities have, and we need to be able to stand up for what's right. So I think we need to follow through with this one.
There are no other comments that moved already, so I would request a vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Mac. Item 4, operations, nothing at this time, and item 5, conservation lands, the dam management agreement. And now, Diego Lentier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you've all just learned about the Clendenin Dam, the property, so I won't go into detail about what that looks like. But as you are likely aware, Thornbury is quite a ways from where we sit today within our watershed. And the property, although primarily used for flood control, is also a popular local green space for people to hike, walk their dogs, fish, and biking. Some of the issues that we face there are biking, which is not permitted use, as well as people running their dogs off leash, not cleaning up after the dogs, and the usual suspects in terms of that type of use of the property. So we've been in discussions with staff at the town of Blue Mountains about the potential for a management agreement with the town whereby the town would manage the parking lot area and the garbages and things that go along with that. But then the town would also offer their bylaw enforcement staff to be present on site periodically to help look after the nuisance permitted use issues on the property, because it's not practical for Great Sauble to be overly responsive from being stationed here or wherever staff are throughout the watershed at any given time to be in Thornbury in time to deal with these types of issues, whereas Town of the Mountains bylaw enforcement staff are much closer and could add it to their regular schedule. So at this point, this has not gone to council at Town of the Blue Mountains. In discussions with senior staff at the municipality, it was decided that this table was the first stepping stone to see if there's an interest from the board. And if there is, then the next step would be for it to go to municipal council to see if there's an interest there too. As a type of precedence, we have other properties that we own within the Town of the Blue Mountains where we do have management agreements. So the Pease Marsh Nature Preserve area is under a management agreement with the Town of the Mountains, 5-year agreement, as is Fireman's Park, which is just down the trail from this property, and a trail that goes to Clarksburg that is owned by Grace Sauble but managed by the town. So ultimately, I think it's a good opportunity. It lends itself well to enhancing the property, enhancing the use, and then one of the other things we've talked with the town about is possibly moving unnetted dam up in the priority level of management plan for a property to play into a broader recreational trail system of the town. So at this point, the report gives more details than that, but what the recommendation to the board is essentially direction from the board for staff to enter into a negotiate and enter into an agreement with the Town of Blue Mountains, subject to their council also being supportive of this. And then if we were going to have a bylaw from the town act as enforcement for us, there would probably be the resolution from the board required to permit that, but that would come at a future date once we know. At this point, it would be direction to negotiate and enter into an agreement.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'll put the motion on the floor so that we can get comments accordingly. Whereas the Grey Cobbles, whereas the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, GSCA, is the owner of the lands known to us as the Glendennin Dam Conservation Area, herein the site in the Town of Blue Mountains. And whereas under Section 21N of the Conservation Authorities Act, GSCA has the ability to collaborate and enter into agreements with ministries and agencies of government, municipal councils, and local boards and other organizations and individuals. And whereas under subsection D of Section 21 of the Conservation Authorities Act, the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority may lease for a term of 5 years or less land acquired by the authority. That the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors directs staff to negotiate and execute an agreement with the Town of Blue Mountains for the management and enforcement of portions of the Glendennin Dam Conservation Area. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Mackey and Member Day. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay, that was much easier than I thought. All in favor? Yeah, all in favor, carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. It's 2:50. Does anybody want a quick break, just bio or otherwise?
I could recommend, Mr. Chair. Oh.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, just take 5 and we'll stretch our legs a little bit. Thank you.
Father, can you get your
All of you.
All right, everyone, if we could reconvene. Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's 3 o'clock and we're back in session. Moving on under business items, the Trout Hollow Big Head River Management Agreement, attachment 14 in your agendas. We're going to be addressing that. CAO Nadia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start by thanking Margaret Potter, our new conservation plans technician. So Margaret was the one that put this report together, but she's satisfied to present it to the board today. So what we're looking at here is not that different from what we just talked about for Clonetta Dam in the town of Blue Mountains. The Conservation Authority owns a property in the town of Meaford known as the Big Head River Conservation Area or Management Area. And it's better known to people as the Trout Hollow Trail. It's immediately south of the beautiful Joe Park in the town of Meaford. And the trail system itself starts or ends, however you, depends which end you're at, on Grace Sauble's property, and then traverses our property and then enters onto private property for the remainder of the trail. A large portion of that, I believe, is owned by the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy. There may also be private ownership as well. There is a group called the Trout Hollow Trail Association that does work on managing and maintaining this trail system. And we've been in discussions with the association about whether they can do the management on the section of trail that falls under Sauble's property, as well as lease a barn structure that we have on the property, again, at what I would consider the front of our property. And so what we're looking at here is direction from the board to staff to, again, negotiate and execute an agreement. This is not unprecedented. This type of agreement, again, is very similar to the arrangement that we have with the Birch Trail Conservancy, where there are trails on our properties, but they're a volunteer team manage and maintain those trails. It's a good working relationship for us because it takes some of the load off of our staff to make sure that the trail is maintained in a good way. In the long run, we may have to revisit this because the Big Head River has a nasty habit right now of eating our trail in this section of property. It happens to be right in a bend and it's quite gravelly, and then the river keeps receding into the bank and the trail with it. And the reason we can't move back further is there's a steep slope, substantial steep slope that is impeding us on the other side. But in the short term, I believe this is a very good relationship opportunity between the authority and the Trout Hollow Trail Association. And my recommendation to the board is that we do move forward with this.
Thank you, Ted. Again, I'll put this on the floor so we can discuss. Whereas the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority, GSCA, is the owner of the lands known to us as the Big Head River Conservation Area here in the site, in the municipality of Meaford, and whereas under Section 21A of the Conservation Authorities Act, GSCA has the ability to collaborate and enter into agreements with ministries and agencies of government, municipal councils, and local boards and other organizations and individuals. And whereas under subsection D of Section 21 of the Conservation Authorities Act, the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority may lease for a term of 5 years or less land acquired by the authority. That the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors authorizes the CAO to execute an agreement with the Trout Hollow Trail Association for the use of the Big Head River Conservation Area. May I have a mover and second, please? Member Maxwell. Member Carl. Comments?
Yes, I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, if there is, I'm sure there is in the agreement, the requirement for insurances, liability insurances, split costs, and does that include the volunteer residents or the association that they have some insurance liabilities on this?
That's through Mr. Chair, that's correct, yeah. So with these types of agreements, essentially we put waivers in there, liability waivers, to essentially indemnify the authority. and that whichever organization we're striking this agreement with assumes liability, but only in so much as their activities on the property, right? So if something happened somewhere else on the property, not related to this, then we would still have our insurance to cover that. And so in addition to that waiver of liability, we ask for a certificate of insurance as well that names Grace Sauble, and put a clarity point in there that in the case of a suit or tort, their insurance would be primary and ours would be secondary.
And what do you have it?
Sure.
What is the amount of that insurance?
$5 million.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, the only thing I would add is, having worked with Robert Bircher and the Truckle Association, they're very professional, dedicated, cooperative, responsible group. And I think it's a wonderful thing that that we're making this overture to make that arrangement, because I think it'll benefit everyone for it. The only question I have, I guess, is on the north side of the river, right along Miller Street. It's interesting, there's a gentleman, Mr. Fulfer, that lives up there, where the trail kind of comes along the river on that side. He tends to claim that he owns down to the river, so I'm not sure which border shown here. And he's said I met with him a couple times, and he said that he allows people to kind of use that trail, but his concern is, to your point, from a liability perspective, if something happens there, who does own that land? Have we had that surveyed? Do we know exactly who specifically owns that property? Because according to this line and his comments, or his opinion, there seems to be an overlap.
What I would say is that, so I can't answer that for certain right now, but these maps should be read at the scale that they're at, which is relatively coarse. Anywhere where this trail deviates off of our property is not something that we're considering as part of this agreement, but that might be something the Church Hollow Trail Association wants to consider if they're managing the whole trail system.
Right, and I think it would be incumbent upon the association does work with council as well to make sure that we are kind of making sure that all parties in this are content that this is proper moving forward. So we'll continue to kind of work with that group to maintain, and Mr. Fulton to make sure that the situation is amenable to everyone. So, Member Maxwell.
Well, I just have a question, because you mentioned, I'm not supposed to say somebody's name, but a photographer and a novelist that you have on that, working on that trail. Is it somehow tied to John Muir?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's a kind of a local historian, particularly adept at John Muir's history, and does many presentations at various bodies around Southern Ontario about the relationship.
No, but I'm at the trail, somehow tied to John Muir?
Yes, because it does lead down to past and actually it's, I think, past the GSCA property, but it does tie into an area where John Muir originally had a camp settlement and did live there for a while. So It does tie in. Historically, Meaford is quite
proud of him.
Proud of it, and wanting to make sure that this trail is maintained, because it does lend to a lot of historical credence. So, that's you.
And there is an interpretive sign at the trailhead.
Any more further questions or comments? Seeing none, I would call the vote. All in favor? And carry. Thank you. Still continuing under their business items, administration, items 6 through 10, forestry, communications, education, GIS, and DWSP. There is nothing to report at this time. So we will move on to CAO report. The only thing I wanted to mention at this point was I wanted to, again, just give credit to GSCA staff. I've had the pleasure of seeing them in action. I was at the strategic meeting at the Old Sound Home Cottage Show, where we've had staff present and touting GSCA's efforts, and thank you for that, and it was very well done and presented. But I would also like to say that I had the pleasure of attending your film festival on last week. And again, give credit to Members Day and Dubik, who were front and center with GSCF, and as well with Tim for their efforts. It was an excellent evening, and Autumn Belchier and the youth forum was really interesting, and I think really well attended by people. So kudos to everyone involved, because it was a great event and a great evening. So moving on to the chair report. I know I probably stepped all over you there, because I'm sure you would mention those things, but I just want to get my 2 cents in with as well. So that's okay. Vice Chair,
Yeah, just before we move off the Earth Film Festival, just a reminder, and everybody has this on their desks. The online auction is still on, so we are still pushing this. It ends tomorrow at 7 p.m., I believe. So please, there are some really great opportunities and purchases. Really, there's weekend in the Beaver Valley in the View Jude Hotel. So there's lots of great packages. Please do take a look. Great price points as well. So please, support us and have fun.
Well, if you can't afford to stay at Walters Falls, then you go to the Beaver Valley.
Matthew.
Thank you. It's been an extremely busy month since we saw you last for all staff. We have been, Mr. Chair alluded to, there's been several public events. So we've done a lot of strategic plan public outreach, including 2 events in Owen Sound at the Bay Shore on April 25th, so an afternoon and an evening event. Unfortunately, those were not exceedingly well attended, but we managed to have some other events too. We were at Meaford Hall on Monday, April 29th, again, both afternoon and evening. That event went very well. It was a nice sized venue, and we did have some relatively good attendance. We put up a display at the tree sale for the strategic plan and had staff talking with there. Again, at the Home and Cottage Expo, we were at the Home and Cottage Expo to present the strategic plan, but planning staff were also there as well to answer questions from the public about who we are, what we do, when we might get a permit. And so, really good item to get that out into the face of the public to be available for those questions. We did bring the strategic plan display to the film festival and encouraged attendees to provide their feedback to us. Additionally, we've been asked by the Healthy Communities Partnership to provide a presentation this coming Friday on our strategic plan, and so I'll be doing that, and Gloria will be there to talk about some of our education programming as well. And we have, if you may have noticed, in some of your municipal offices or libraries, there are comment boxes for people to be able to provide comments on the strategic plan. So this is twofold. There's a QR code on it, so if people are computer savvy and they'd rather do it online, they can do that. But if that's not their preferred method of commenting, there are hard copies, so people can physically fill it out, put it in the box, and at the end of June, we'll collect, or at the end of May, beginning of June, we'll collect those boxes. So that's been very, very busy. I'm also trying to get in front of the band councils for Chippewas and Sugden and Chippewas and Nawash. I've had no response from Sugden at this point. I have had a response from Nawash, just hoping to set up a date so that we can engage with the chief and council there as well. So that's been very busy. The tree sale was held at the end of April, 27th of April on a Saturday, a very rainy Saturday morning. I'd like to thank all the members that came and helped out or attended and purchased some trees. It was really well attended despite the weather, and I think we grossed about $15,000 that day in sales, which is very good. And so it was great that we're able to host this again because it did have a bit of a hiatus through COVID. I attended a Niagara Escarpment Biosphere Network meeting a few weeks ago. So the Niagara Escarpment Biosphere Network is the new governing body of the Niagara Escarpment Biosphere. It's been extracted from the NEC. The NEC is still the regulatory body, but not the governing body. And this is at the request, I believe, of UNESCO in terms of having this more community-based than government-based. And every 10 years, regardless of who the governing body is, UNESCO requires that that designation is renewed, and you have to prove that it's still warranted. So as part of the 10-year renewal, Grace Sauble, as well as other relevant organizations, were invited to an event to talk and present on the work that we're doing to protect the Niagara Escarpment, and the reviewers were in that room to listen. It's my understanding, based on feedback from the NEB, and that the reviewers were quite impressed with all of the work that's being done in our area, but also through the southern parts, through the Niagara Escarpment, on all the work at different levels of government and agencies to protect this amazing, unique feature. As was mentioned, Earth Film Festival happened this past Thursday. Attendance was good, and the presentations were phenomenal. And we're very, very lucky to be able to have Autumn Peltier and Steve Belford come to provide their films and to present and talk to the community. So big thank you to the Grace Sauble Conservation Foundation for all and the members that sit on that for all the work that goes into that event and for bringing the community together for that. Children's Water Festival happened last week. So thank you again for anybody who attended. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but over 2,000 elementary students were, as well as almost 250 high school students who volunteered there, and almost 100 corporate community volunteers as well. So really, really well attended. I mean, anytime we can get kids out for environmental education is a great thing. So happy to see that this keeps moving forward. On that note, a couple of other educational events involving some of the kids locally. So just this past Friday, our education staff and other members of the team helped with the high skills major for St. Mary's High School. So we had students come to the Inglis Falls Conservation Area, including this area, and learn about the indicators for the watershed report card and how those are arrived at. And then in the afternoon, working through the GIS exercises to extract and analyze that data. And so we're hopeful that this is the type of program that will grow and provide some hands-on real-life experience for kids that are choosing to do these high skills majors in an environmental field. Chelsea Vieira, who's our education environmental educator, sorry Chelsea, organized and facilitated a tree planting day in Tara, and this was done with the local elementary school. That was last Wednesday, so we own the property, the Tara Dam property, and it's generally been maintained in a park-like setting for 3 years, and we thought it would be good to work with the kids at the school there to put some trees in the ground. So the kids at the school, I think it was the grade 7s, were interested in climate action that they can take and facilitating a tree planting project. And then, so the grade 7 students worked with grade 2 through 4 students to plant about 100 trees and to raise about $1,500 to secure the trees and the materials. So Grace Sauble helped facilitate this. We provided property to do it on, and the Inglis Falls Arboretum Alliance donated 50 trees that they've grown in Shade House just across the field. So really great community event. Along the same lines, we hosted Trees of the World again this year on a few weeks ago now. And this is an educational experience for grade 3 students that's hosted at the Arboretum by staff and by the Inglis Falls Arboretum Alliance. And I happen to have one of those grade 3 students living in my house, and he was excited about this project. And I find that, I say it all the time, but if I ask my kids what they did today at school, I rarely get much of an answer. If I ask my kids what they did on a day that they got to go out into the environment, they talk about it. So it really does have a lasting impact with the kids that participate. A couple other things. Our day camp program is almost full. We have 13 spots remaining spread across 4 weeks. So that's excellent. I think we have 20 spots each week for 9 weeks. So only 13 left, and it doesn't start for another month and a half. It is pretty amazing. So very popular program. And then the last thing I wanted to note to you, and I did already forward this email, but the formal notice from Saugeen Valley came out today is that Jennifer Stevens, the general manager at Saugeen, has resigned, and Eric Downing, who was acting nurse, she was away on a leave, is again in the acting position. And I just thought, board members, especially some that share the watershed boundary, it's important for you to know that. And that is everything, like I said,
Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions or comments for the chair or for the report? Seeing nothing, thank you very much. So now resolution to move into closed session, and seeing that we did address two of the items previously, I'll move that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors proceed into closed session at 3:20 p.m. to discuss matters related to the following. 1, minutes of the closed session of the regular Board of Directors meeting held on February 28, 2024, and point 4, to discuss an item in the Township of Georgian Bluffs related to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals, GSCA Administrative Bylaw Section 4, close bracket XVI, close bracket D. Mover and second, please.